Cheers! Are you ready for a holiday? Well, we are. We want to help you as well to get to your dream destination. If it's the beach, like for us, or is it the mountain or anything else? Well, we give you here some tips in this video on how to find cheap flights.
Lift off.
Very welcome to this new episode of Off to 7,000 Islands. And I got asked a lot, and also some people complained that I only make videos about travel restrictions in times of that, well, of all the diseases who are going around. So here now a video about how to find cheap flights. So my name is Eric, and my wife and I run a little hotel here in the Philippines, so we're very much involved into tourism, and therefore we also want you to encourage to travel, because we are love to travel ourselves. And of course, like, we cannot travel like Elon Musk or Darth Vader. We just need to take flights, and you cannot go by bus to some of the places like the Philippines. So let's get into the video. As always, I included all the links in the description and some helpful things which you can read down there as well. And of course, also the timestamps, so you can jump from one part to another. But most important is compare. That's point one. And that's basically, you need to compare flights. If you just go and take the first best airline Google gives out for you, then you might have a really expensive price, especially now in this climate, high oil prices. So comparing is the easiest on pages like Skyscanner, Kayak, and who knows, there are so many, and I put some down below. But there you have a comparing website. We describe later like how they work and things like this, but it's really practical. And what you can do is, on those websites you usually can put a price tracker. This price tracker is notifying you when prices go up or down for your chosen destination or flight. And that's really practical to have this kind of information, and you don't need to check every day. And those websites are very practical because you can search for whole countries. Like, you, for example, search for the US or parts of the US to the Philippines, like the whole country, because there's more than one airport, and maybe sometimes one of the smaller airports actually has a cheaper flight than one of the bigger ones, but you still can reach that airport. A little bit later in the video we also talk about what else you can find there and what are the risks and consequences of finding flights on other websites than the airlines' websites. But let's move on to one of the most important things, and that's flexibility. And that's flexibility about timing, and flexibility about the place where you want to go and the place where you want to fly from. As we said, you don't have a rocket ship, so you have actually many options to fly from. And that's one of the big things. So where do you fly from is very important. So maybe there's more than one airport close to you, or maybe there's even an airport over the border in another country. For example, in Europe, we have many big capitals which are actually really easy to reach. For example, I've been growing up in Dresden, and the closest airport, big airport, is in Berlin. But there's also one in Prague, not far away, but it's in another country. So don't forget those kind of things. Maybe you live in the north of the US, and actually you can fly from Canada. That's quite practical as well. So you can look for those kind of tricky bits to just find out where are the best flights, and those sites like Skyscanner, Kayak and Co, they help you with this as well, because you can really easily search for stuff. Let's talk about timing. Well, first of all, you need to look if there's any major holidays in your country at the time where you want to travel, but also is there maybe any major holidays in the country you want to travel to, because that will affect your flight, but also your domestic travel then in your holiday destination. And also when is actually main season and off season, and what are the disadvantages of coming in the off season. Maybe they're actually not that bad and you still can come. For example, here in the Philippines, I think a lot of times people avoid coming here because the main season, while not in the main holiday season of Europe, for example, but it's actually quite a good time to. So you just need to be a bit more flexible when you're here then, and when there's a day of rain, well, maybe you stay inside and play some board games, or get drunk or whatever you are like to do. But especially if you're traveling close to the equator, then it's always warm, for example, and always nice. And the water here, for example, in the ocean is always warm, no matter how much it rains. Of course, there are storms and other things to look out for, but often we cannot control the weather at all. So that's one of the things I just wanted to say. And then let's talk quickly about the timing of how flights are released. So most of the airlines are releasing their flights 9 to 7 months before departure. And then often the flights are fairly cheap at that point, and then they go gradually up to like 3 months before departure. And 3 months before departure, the flights are often the most expensive one, because there most people book. And of course, if the flights are full, they don't go down again. But if the flights are not full, usually they go down again a little bit until you fly. But of course, last minute flights, you need to be very flexible as well, because you can't just set one day and on that day you need to travel, you need to be more flexible. But if you are flexible, that's a good option for you too. And now to our final point. What are some of the risks and disadvantages of maybe booking a cheap flight? And beginning, I want to by addressing the issue of third-party providers like Expedia, Booking and so forth. Most of them are very legit, but there are some disadvantages. You maybe have noticed, if you use Skyscanner or any of the platforms before, that they often have cheaper flights than the airline itself. Well, that is because they buy so far in advance certain contingents from the airline, and they buy it very early in advance, sometimes even before the flights are finally planned. And they can offer that to you for a cheaper price, because the airline sold those tickets already. So that's good, but it has some disadvantages. The flights can change more often, as they might not be actually fixed in stone, and they're trying to get the best price out of what you paid for the price and what other people paid of that price. So sometimes those flights are changing more than if you would book over the airline website. And then you also need to look out for, of course, long overlays, long transit times you actually have. Because maybe you're willing to actually stay a very long time somewhere, and then you can just take a flight who's cheaper because no one wants to stay somewhere long in an airport. For example, I spent with a friend of mine in Sao Paulo, I think 18 hours. So that's a long time. It's not really enough for a big city like this to go outside, but it's also really too long to stay in the airport. And those kind of things, of course, make your flight cheaper. And if you're willing to take that on, well, then why not? And sometimes those third-party platforms, they also have like crazy offers. For example, flight to the USA from Europe. And then you're like, oh, okay, that sounds cool. And then you look, and I flew one time from Manchester to Oslo to go to New York. And then on the way back, I flew from Baltimore to New York and back to Manchester. And that's the kind of stuff you can look out for. And if you are flexible and you're willing to take basically that disadvantage of the time effort, of the travel, of all the transits and all this kind of stuff, if you want to take that on, well, go for it, and you can find really cheap flights. And that's, of course, depends on any connections, and those platforms like Skyscanner are very good in finding them, and often third-party platforms offer you combinations between airlines and all this kind of stuff, which brings also some disadvantage, like if your luggage maybe not get checked through and you need to do that by yourself and all this kind of stuff. but if you're willing to take that on, it's often much cheaper. And then finally, traveling in times of that, well, nowadays, those, I don't want to say all those words which trigger the algorithm to put my video down, but well, you know all about that. Some countries close everything, and that's of course not good. And that's often a bit unpredictable, especially when you book like months ahead of time. Then of course you might have a flight which gets cancelled when that country where you stop over, you have a layover, or where the airline is coming from has a lockdown. And that's really a problem and a risk you need to take. For example, as we flew last time to the Philippines, we flew from Frankfurt to Hong Kong and from Hong Kong to Manila. But because of all the kind of restrictions and things, and we missed our flight, and then we needed to fly to Cebu, and we needed to spend lots of time in Hong Kong because of that. Yeah, there's just some of the tricky things, so you always need to check also, and of course usually the airlines tell you that, but you need to always check where you have your transit and what you need there as well. In most countries you don't need anything to show for when you do transit, but you know, in these times you never know. Well, that was all for the traveling things. Please give that video a thumbs up, and if you want to know more about the Philippines and traveling here and living here actually as people who lived before in Europe, well then check out our channel maybe and leave sub here for us. That would be great and really helps us as well, as we get encouragement that you're watching our videos and be on the path of settling here with us in the Philippines. That would be really nice, and we see you in the next one.